Martin's there.
Okay,
Phyllis
so
is
hi
there.
everyone. My name is Dina Caswell. I'm the library director at Bushnell-Sage Library. And I was very
Neal's
excited to
there.
have Tor reach out to us and offer to run this program that we're going to talk about tonight, Richard Neal and the Tax Evaders. So I'm going to hand the reins off to Tor in just a minute. Please feel free, as you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on things, so will Tor. We're very excited to have a conversation about this topic. Thank you all for coming out, and then I'm going to pass things over to Tor.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Hello, hello.
Hi, Tor.
It's Tor.
Welcome.
Hi, Tor.
Hi, Nadia.
Hello, Tor.
Hi, Nadia.
So yeah, thanks for coming out. I'm glad to see everyone. I wonder, I gotta fix one thing over here if you don't mind. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Am I hooked in? Can anybody hear this voice?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay,
And we can hear you.
okay.
Okay, so I think most people are here who are gonna show up. I'm gonna get started. I think people may be muted as the presentation starts, so don't worry if you can't be heard. But if you have any questions or any comments, throw them in the chat. We're gonna have a good amount of time after my spiel to talk, do some questions, just discuss and interact. So don't worry if you can't talk right now. You'll certainly have time later. So let's get started. Welcome everyone. Thanks very much for coming out. My name is Tor Stumo, and I've got good news and I've got bad news. We'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that this is a program on taxes, and it's probably one of the most boring and complicated things I could inflict on you. But that's not all the bad news. There's more. The taxes are not only complicated and boring. The U.S. tax structure is also one of the most harmful and exploitative systems that we've got. The IRS tax code is over 5,000 pages, and it's designed that way. It's designed to be long. It's designed by policymakers and lobbyists to be long, boring, and incomprehensible. They do this for a reason. The reason is that when you feel anger at the unfairness of the system, when you see a few people getting all the benefits while the rest of us have to take our lumps, when you feel your frustration boiling over and you want to change, you want to act, you want to just do something, even if it's just fact checking your representative, they do this so you won't know where to start. So that when you try and examine what's going on, you can't even understand the first thing about it. You don't know where to start. Where do you start in the 5,000 page tax code? Do you start in the insurance section? Former IRS commissioner did not disagree that the insurance section of the tax code is understood, but fewer people understand it than people who understand Einstein's theory of relativity. So that's not where you start. I wouldn't start there. I don't understand the theory of relativity. So this is a problem because taxes affect us every day. We pay sales tax every day. We pay user fees. We pay sin tax, and then every year most of us spend most of our taxes in income tax. And this is every year. Everyone experiences this into some form, and it affects our lives greatly. And it's not a good system. It hurts the weakest among us, and the strongest among us. They get off pretty scot-free, or they get welfare from the government. It's just during the same time they're criticizing poor people for getting their welfare. Imagine you're carrying a heavy load, and there's many people carrying this load. It's on their shoulders. You have the strongest people just kind of off to the side saying, oh, you guys are doing great. We're not going to really participate. And you've got the weakest people carrying the heaviest part of the burden. So the reason the tax code is so hard to understand and the reason that it's so complicated and boring is because it's one of the things about the government that affects us most directly in our daily lives. And so if you want to make something difficult to change. If you want to make sure that middle class people, poor people, or just your average Joe, you want to make sure they can't do anything to change it, there's a few things you do. You make any activism, you make any recourse, you make it boring. So when people try and change things, they just get bored. They can't keep their attention there. You make it frustrating. So when you try and understand the system and try and understand how the changes work, you just get frustrated and you give up. You feel alienated. Or they just make you feel angry at yourself for being too stupid maybe to understand. And that's not true. People who can't understand the tax code are not stupid. This is designed very specifically to make people not be able to just interact in any way with this. So, you know, this tax code is like a black hole, really. No light or information can escape from it. And unlike a black hole, it'll make you fall asleep in about 15 seconds. So this black hole, this tax code, it's important. It can take away your house. It can garnish your wages. It can keep you down. It can keep you poor while lifting other people up. And it wasn't always this way, and it isn't always this way. The tax structure is the reason we have roads. It's the reason why we have our interstate highway, why we can drive almost anywhere in the US, why we can fly almost anywhere. It's why K through 12 education is free and very good in many places. It's why we have community health clinics. It's why we have Social Security, so people can retire with dignity. It's why the poorest among us can get health care. Taxes put men on the moon. It defeated Nazism. It's an amazing thing, and it's an amazing tool. But it's being used very badly right now. And something that hasn't changed is the power we have over our tax structure as voters and as constituents. We have a lot of power, and the power has grown. And that's why I'm here today. And this takes us into the good news, finally. The good news is that these problems with the tax system, you know, there's 5,000 plus pages of problems, but the biggest problems, the big systemic problems and the solutions to those problems, they're not hard to understand. They're not complex. They're common sense, and they're not boring either. At least I don't think so. I'll let you be the judge of that. These problems, you don't have to be a tax lawyer to understand them. You don't need to be a financial advisor or an accountant. I'm not certainly any of those things. I'm a university student who learned a little bit about the problems, and I learned about some of the amazing big solutions that are on the horizon right now. And so I did a lot of reading, and I talked to people who really know their stuff. And I learned the direct action that I can take to change things. And that's why I'm here, because Berkshire County, you know, Sheffield residents, Great Barrington residents, people who live in Berkshire County, they have more power to change this existing structure than any other district in the United States. More power by far. And so that's what this meeting is about. It's about the power that you have that very few people in Great Barrington, just the people in Sheffield could change this. And the reason for that is who our representative is. Our representative is Richard Neal. Richard Neal is the most powerful American in the US right now with the ability to jumpstart tax change. He's the tax chairman of the United States House of Representatives. He's one of the Gang of Five, they call it, with the president, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Tax Committee Leader. He's the fifth one, and he is the most powerful one to start this process. We're his constituents. And all we need is a few hundred people to bring him back and hold him to account. So this is what the program's about. The program, we're going to talk about some very basic problems with the tax system. Very easy to understand. Even I can understand them. So you'll be fine. And we're going to talk about some step-by-step, very simple solutions that all of you can take easily. And each one of you, this isn't just screaming into the void. This isn't writing a letter to your representative and knowing that it'll be bent or not answered or not looked at. This is direct action you can take and see tangible results. So I don't like talking at people. I'm no good at it. So I want this to be more of a discussion, a deliberation, a discourse. And so I'm going to say my piece quickly. I'm going to tell you some very simple things, and then we'll open it up because I want to hear from you. I've had my head buried in books and articles, and I want to hear what real people think and what they might want to do. So I'll begin. We got I may ask or may not ask a few questions throughout, and I'll certainly solicit questions, and we'll just open the floor up for talking at the end. So no worries. Let's start it off. Okay, so we're going through a pandemic right now. In this pandemic, the pandemic's killed over 2.5 million, maybe almost 3 million or more people by this time, and destroyed the livelihoods of many more. And luckily, or unluckily, there's one group of people that's doing better than ever. And it's not the middle class, it's not the poor. Middle class and the poor, they've lost millions of jobs, they've lost their health care, they've lost their benefits, they've been kicked out of their homes. Things have been really terrible. It's not them, it's the richest among us. The richest 600 people in the US made over 1.3 trillion since the beginning of the pandemic. That's equivalent to half of government revenue, US government revenue in 2014. It's enough for them to give almost $11,000 of pandemic relief to every single US household and still be richer than they were before the pandemic began. And they were pretty rich. Worldwide, billionaires have gained 54% of wealth since the pandemic started. The total wealth went from $8 trillion to almost $12.5 trillion since the pandemic started. This has been a good thing for them. So this is a big problem. Things are going downhill, and the people who have the most power, the most money to change it, and in our economy, in our society, money is power. And yet they're hoarding it for themselves, and they're making sure that the load is on people who can't afford it. So we're gonna go briefly into some of these problems and why the majority of people haven't been successful in changing these tax systems and these inequalities. So we'll start by laying out the problem. There's a lie that people are told. There's a lie that people are told that politicians care just as much about their constituents as they do about their donors. That's wrong. The top 0.01%, that's the 1% of the 1%, account for almost a third of political spending. 1 in 13 political dollars spent on campaigns, on super PACs, on Republican and Democratic committees. It comes from 12 people. That's 1 in 13 political dollars coming from 12 people. How can your congressperson represent your interests if most of their time is spent hearing only the perspectives of very wealthy people? If the reason for re-election is coming from these wealthy people. A former New York representative, Chris Collins, said, my donors are basically saying, get it done or never call me again. Senator Lindsey Graham, when he was passing the Trump tax cuts, said, if we don't pass these tax cuts, the financial contributions will stop. These people live in terror of their contributors. A slide shown to incoming Democratic lawmakers in 2013 by the DNC, Democratic National Committee, was leaked to the press, and it instructs incoming Democrats to spend 4 to 7 hours every day fundraising, just calling up rich donors in a phone booth, asking for money, begging for money. They spend all their time around rich people. They spend more time talking to donors and corporate executives than the average constituent. So whose perspective do you think they're naturally more sympathetic to? They've drank the Kool-Aid. More importantly, they know where they're donating. They know whether their donor money will increase or decrease depending on the way they vote. There was a study from Princeton a number of years ago that showed that pro-rich bills pass 60 to 70% of the time. Pro-business and special interest bills pass 60 to 70% of the time as well. bills supported by a majority of constituents pass 0% of the time if opposed by business and the rich. It's stunning because it's true. It's unbelievable. And again, this is a study. It's done by Princeton. It may not be completely accurate, but if there's even a big margin of error here, things are very wrong. The rich only agree with the majority of constituents 30% of the time, and that's where bills supported by that's where the bipartisan bills come from. When the rich agree with the business class who agrees with the majority of constituents. The reason so much money and time is spent on advocating tax breaks for the super rich and corporations is because these arguments don't fundamentally make sense. They're illogical. And so lawyers have to spend a lot of time, PR reps have to spend a lot of time making them pretty and making them appealing to people, appealing to representatives. And we only see the tip of the iceberg in this political advertising. The representatives who make the decisions, they're under a waterfall of these every day, 4 hours a day, apparently. Taxing the rich is one of the most popular bipartisan positions in the US. All the citizen polling regarding taxation of wealthy people is stunning. A majority of Republicans, 60% or plus, support very progressive wealth taxes by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. This is taxes on people who earn more than $35 million. This is people to, for example, if you give $5,000 to someone who's middle class, maybe makes 70, 80 grand, they may spend it on their mortgage, fixing their car, getting food on the table, healthcare, whatever they need. The point is, it would be very important for them. These people with all their wealth, they can't reasonably spend it in a lifetime. Most people make in the US only $1.4 million total. All the money they make, that's pre-tax. So these people, there's no real reason they should keep all this money, especially because 20% of the income earned in the US is earned by rich people, but 40% of the wealth is owned by rich people. Some examples include, Jeff Bezos, for example. If the average wealth is around 80 grand for the middle class, but let's bump it up to 100. If we took a staircase and we made each step 100 grand, the average wealth of most people, 2 steps would be 200 grand, 3 steps would be 300. To get wealth equal to Jeff Bezos, you'd have to have a staircase the height of Mount Everest times 44,000. So 44,000 Mount Everests to get equivalent wealth. If you wanted to make the same amount of money as Jeff Bezos makes in a day, you'd have to start working when Columbus came to the US, making 5 grand a week, every week, not paying taxes or spending any of it. That's how much he makes a day. It doesn't make sense to me. So there's some big problems, big conceptions we have to fix. There's the idea that taxes prevent rich, if you raise taxes on rich people and corporations, they won't spend money on their workers, and they won't invest in small businesses. And that just fundamentally doesn't make sense. For example, if you're a corporate executive, your accountability is to your shareholders, not your employees, not your customers. Your responsibility is to the people who own shares in your company. So if you're doing well and you get a tax break, why the hell would you hire more people? Pardon my French, or invest in your business if you are getting these extra profits? The employees are the tools you use to make profit. So if you get more profit, you lay them off. Companies that pay less taxes, under 20%, they actually have negative job growth compared to companies that pay more taxes. Another lie that we need to get rid of is capital gains taxes. People who earn money through the stock market get taxed far lower than people who earn their money through normal employment. A firefighter pays a higher tax rate than Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett pays about 20% of his income, while a firefighter will pay, depending on his income, he may pay much more. a wealth tax. People say a wealth tax is unreasonable. A wealth tax is taking away money that's safe. But we already have wealth taxes. You all are taxed on your wealth. You're taxed on your property. The average person has 60% of their assets in their property. So when you get taxed on your property, that is a wealth tax. The average rich person has 7% of their assets in their primary residence. They actually pay a lower wealth tax than you do right now. So this brings us to our second problem. So we already know that the rich people, they avoid paying taxes. They structure the tax code so it's difficult for us to understand, so that they can get all the loopholes or donut holes that exist, right? They avoid taxes. It is what it is. We know the system's unfair, right? Let's go to the second point, though. Of the taxes they actually owe, $1 trillion a year, and this is an estimation by the IRS, so it's conservative. $1 trillion a year are evaded by taxpayers. This is a federal crime, tax evasion. Again, the revenue of the US government was $3 trillion in 2014. Last year, they avoided $1 trillion. That's a third of all revenue. This is a crime, and it's unconscionable because this is when we need it the most. We need this pandemic relief. We need infrastructure. People are having very hard times. This is not a time to be stealing. And to be clear, tax evasion is theft. This is not a victimless crime. People are suffering because of a lack of money. You see these bills that are coming through, whether or not you agree with them. People are even Democratic senators are not wanting to vote for the bills because they don't know how they're going to pay for them. Well, we've got right here $1 trillion in free money, and I'll tell you why. The IRS is in charge of course, in charge of enforcing tax payments. And so they'll do audits and they'll find tax evaders. So that's how Al Capone was arrested, tax evasion. So if they can get Al Capone, they can probably get most of these millionaires and billionaires. Unfortunately, the US, the lawmakers in the last 18 years cut the IRS budget by more than 20%. The IRS, the inspectors the IRS have equal the same number we had in the 1950s, when the economy was a seventh of the size. And last year, the IRS didn't even follow up with more than 370,000 high-income households that didn't even bother to file tax returns. This is not obfuscation or highly complex tax returns. This is just not filing them at all. The rate of multimillionaires auditing went down from 12% of multimillionaires, which is already low, to 3% in 8 years. Fewer than 1% of corporations are audited. And I've got a friend down the street. She owned a diner that went under, and she's still being hounded by the IRS every day, trying to garnish her wages, trying to take the money that she needs to live, support her daughter and her grandchildren, and she's being attacked. All these guys are going off scot-free because they've got tax lawyers, they've got financial advisors, they've got accountants to spin webs and prevent enforcement. So what do we do about this? Well, funding the IRS is a big solution, and it's one that's gaining huge popularity, not only in the media, in the New York Times, even the Wall Street Journal. They're all coming out with editorial boards and opinion pieces saying, fund the IRS, we need this. This is something that we need. The executive branch, President Biden, his administration, they're very enthusiastic about funding the IRS. The chairman of the Senate Tax Committee is also enthusiastic. There's one person we haven't heard much from. It's Richard Neal. That's our congressman. That's the chairman of the Tax Committee in the House, the one who has the power to get this all started. He has not released a single statement on the IRS. Keep in mind, his committee oversees the IRS. His committee starts the legislation that sets the budget for the IRS. And funding the IRS is an amazing investment. A study done by the U.S. Treasury Department showed that $1 investment in the IRS gets $6 back in direct enforcement. Indirect enforcement, deterrence from other people hiding income, is $18 for every $1 you put in. This is a very conservative estimate, but it means your returns. Let's say you wanted to invest in the stock market. If someone offered you 18,000% returns, you'd probably faint. It's unbelievable. And for the rich, put it backwards. Every dollar they take away from the IRS, their return on investment is 6,000 to 18,000%, or most likely very, very much more. They get to keep all that money. So Congress funds the IRS. Richard Neal's committee funds the IRS, starts that process. So what do we do about it? What do we do to change? So we can fund them. Number one, that's a big proposal. One proposal is to fund the IRS $100 billion over the next 10 years. That would get back, by a conservative estimate, $1.8 trillion in tax revenue, which can be put to very good use. Another thing that we can do, though, is just change the way they do things. In a 2019 analysis, the IRS estimated that Americans report on their taxes less than half of all income that's not subject to some form of third-party verification like W-2. So for example, if you're paying taxes, you do a W-2, your employer also does one. So the IRS can check against those two documents. If the employee is posting different income than the employer, they know there's a disparity. It's very easy to fix. More than 95% of wage income, which is the W-2, is reported. What's not reported is things like business profits, rent, royalties, capital gains, which is money made off of stocks or property investment. And the IRS, of course, they don't have the experts to enforce this right now. Number one. Number two, even if they had the experts, it takes a long time. It takes time and money to get this done. So consider what happened after Congress passed legislation in '86 to require taxpayers to list a social security number for each person they claim as a dependent. People would get tax benefits for dependents, and one woman even listed 80 dependents in San Francisco to get quite a lot of money from the IRS. Once the government required taxpayers to list social security numbers for their dependents, a sharp drop in fraud happened. The next year, overnight, 7 million children abruptly disappeared from tax returns. So keep in mind, social security numbers are not something, especially back in the 80s, that the government could easily check on. So consider a change in enforcement. We have W-2s, which means that 95% of wage income is reported. We've got social security numbers, which means dependents are reported. How do we make sure that business income, royalties, rent, capital gains are reported? Well, former IRS Commissioner Rosati came up with a solution. The solution is making a 1099 new form that tracks money just going in and out of banks. And the IRS will get the information directly from banks. They'll be able to check it and compare it to listed profits and rent and royalties and capital gains. And they imagine that a lot of this fraud will just disappear overnight. As soon as they know the government can hold them more accountable more easily, the fraud just goes away. So that's a lot of policy. I'm sure you guys are thrilled, very excited. But now comes the actual exciting part. Now comes what you can do directly. This is again, right now, all of you here have more power than hundreds of millions of other citizens. This is what you can do to change the tax code and change the country. Richard Neal has not made a peep about funding the IRS and changing the tax code since in the last 2 years. And momentum is building. Momentum's building in the executive branch, momentum's building in the press, in the general consciousness. There's pressure there already, but he's not said anything. So this is how we can fix the issue. We need a small group of people to summon Richard Neal back to a town hall meeting, run by and for the people. If we get around 300 signatures, very modest goal actually, compared to most things. I remember petition to rename a submarine Bodie McBoatface had several thousand. So this this should be a little easier. So we'll have a list with people's names, their addresses, and their occupations. We'll send this list of people to Richard Neal, and we'll summon him back to a town hall. This is something that people do about potholes. We're going to do it about something that is of national importance. Neal will, the town hall would be on Zoom, so he can do it from Washington or wherever he'd like from his toilet. It would preferably consist of testimonials and questions by citizens. Neal would be given time to answer questions at the end. But we'd be asking him direct questions. Are you going to fund the IRS as recommended by these experts? Are you going to get on board with something that even old IRS commissioners are begging for? It's not just us that would hold him accountable, though. We would invite national and local press to the town hall meeting to keep Neal good on his promises. And here's how we get the New York Times, the Washington Post, these big national organizations. I'm in contact right now with a very successful nonprofit group that focuses on tax fairness for Americans. The group is called the Patriotic Millionaires. They're a group of progressive millionaires who want to pay more taxes, who want the rich to contribute more and actually pay their fair share. Their work on tax reform has been featured in 75 countries. They've met with President Obama. They've met with Richard Neal. They've met with local, state, and federal government countless times in their advocacy. And if they're at our meeting, you can bet your bottom dollar that national press will be there as well. So us citizens, if the people at this meeting each get, for example, 10 signatures, and I'm going to be doing more of these events, getting signatures myself, but we get 300 people, we bring him back, we force him to answer hard questions, we hold him to account, and we have the press there to make sure he stays accountable. That's something that terrifies representatives. To continue, I'm going to continue these Zoom programs through Berkshire County. I'm going to go to Pittsfield. I'm going to go to Great Barrington, go to Springfield. I'm going to table, get signatures from many different people. If any of you would like to be involved and realize that this amazing power you have, again, this is something that happens once in several lifetimes. The silver platter for change right now. There's so much momentum. The press. Imagine stories about Congressman Neal is having his feet held to the fire by his constituents on the story that's already been gaining momentum. It's something that is incredibly powerful, and it's something that works. We can see. So participating in this civic activism, would be incredibly helpful. People go out, they get signatures, they make change. These civic activists are some of the happiest, most fulfilled people out there. You would make a huge, tangible change. You get to actually, for once, see the result of your impact. This isn't just writing a letter to a congressman or screaming into the void. This is actually fun. It's effective, and it makes tangible change. So we can get representatives accountable again, make some huge change in Berkshire County, and by extension, the whole country. We've got the most powerful man in the country who's our representative, who can start this process. We better take advantage of it. So that's my presentation. I'd love to open the floor for questions. People can comment in the chat, and we can talk some brass tacks, questions about anything you've heard, how you may want to get involved, or just tax policy, cheats, lies, or criticisms you have in general. I'm going to let Dina do the moderating, and I'm going to turn the light on here so the background gets a little less fuzzy. Thank you.
That's great. So if anyone wanted to drop a question in the chat, or I believe there might be an option for you to raise your hand if you wanted to speak. But yeah, any questions that you have for Tor would be appreciated. So Judith just asked us, do we know if Neal will be running for re-election?
I think it's a pretty safe bet. Neal's been in power for a while, and there was quite a fierce election last year between Holyoke Mayor Alex Morse and Neal, with some pretty nasty tactics. It would not be a surprise to have him run again. Even if he doesn't, let's say he's going to retire next year or after the next cycle. Pressure like this right now, when the iron is hot these few months. Even if he's going to retire, it would not be very tough to get him into action.
Question for you, Tor. John Gauger.
Hey, John.
Does anybody understand the redistricting in Massachusetts? Are you going to keep all your congressmen, or does anybody have any feel for the population decrease or increase?
Right. That's a little bit outside my purview and the purview of this action right here. This action would take place in the next 2 months.
No, I'm just saying that based on the census data, the next election cycle will have new districts, new congressional districts based on your population. So he might not even have a seat. If you remember in the last cycle, the congressmen from around Boston, a couple congressmen from around Boston lost their seats. So they consolidated congressional districts.
Right. We're in a lower density area of the state, so it would take some geometric finagling to change the district enough to remove him, I imagine. But yeah, it's a bit again, this is a problem in the next few years if it even happens. So this action right now is very current.
Yeah, the guy's name that I was thinking of was Barney Frank. He lost his seat. Okay. They consolidated his district.
Sure.
Go ahead. I'm done.
We had a question from Adnan who asked, do you think it's better to focus on enforcement of existing legislation or new legislation taxing wealth, stock transactions, etc., or to try to cover all the bases?
That's a great question. All the bases, I would say. Right now, so the patriotic millionaires who we're going to meet with, and they're going to have a meeting for Berkshire County residents who are interested in these actions. They're also going to be present at the town hall meeting. Their main goal is to enact new legislation taxing wealth, taxing stock transactions, taxing just ownership of stock, and that's a big goal of theirs. Right now, though, there's momentum there's momentum to fund the IRS, and the Democrats have the Senate, they have the House, they have the executive right now. That may change next cycle. So primary is enforcing existing legislation, funding the IRS, and taking advantage of existing momentum. But of course, if we have this town hall meeting, we'll be asking about the IRS in addition to wealth taxes, stock transactions, repealing some of the Trump tax cuts, for example.
We had a question from Ellie, who's happy to get names and support, but her main concern was that the IRS will use the funding to go after the lower level situations rather than the big guns. So these people and corporations, as you mentioned, are very well protected. So how do we push back against that?
Right. Well, if we had a commissioner, for example, and committee tax committee chairs, and that were not sympathetic to going after these problems, then yeah, it may be a double-edged sword. Normally, when the IRS has more money, they go after wealthier people, wealthier corporations, even in more conservative governments, even with more conservative commissioners. Right now, Commissioner Rettig is actually a little champing at the bit to get more funding for this purpose. So we already know at least the statements that these people are promising, the commissioner, the IRS, the chairman, the committees overseeing the IRS, they're committing, if they get the money, to go after this. So I would hope that they keep their word. Of course, you never know.
Okay, right. Let me see if I can get this. Renee has raised her hand. Oh, here we go. So Renee, we're ready for a question from you.
Hi again, Tor. The rep that we lost in the Berkshires was John Olver, and after the 2010 census, and Richie Neal just expanded his district. He's based, as we all know, in Springfield. So unless he chooses to retire, he's had 2 people against him for the last 2 elections. I don't think he's going anywhere. He seems to have the corporate contributions, which is part of the problem, to keep himself in power. So, Tor, thank you so much for your presentation. I think you've really done a great job of bringing so many different things into focus. I'm willing to get involved. I'm not worried about IRS money going after the small guy. There's a huge push right now with daily costs and with vet voters to really push this. The time is right now. So after you meet with the Millionaire Patriots, I would really appreciate knowing specifically what I can do. Okay. I don't want to go to rallies. I don't want to do stuff that, sit around and talk about it. I want to do something. So tell me some action items when you get back. And I imagine quite a few people on this call will be willing to do them. We just need to know specifically what to do. If there's a form letter, we can tailor it. If we know who to write to, we don't have to fiddle around trying to get that time done. The easier the Millionaire Patriots can make it for us to become involved, energized, and actually do something, the easier it's going to be. So if you would take that assignment, I will promise you that I will do what you come back with, even if it's to donate money as a result of that meeting. How's that?
It's a lovely thing to say. Yeah. Luckily, you don't need to donate any money or go to any rallies. You don't even need to wait for the meeting. The biggest thing that you can do right now, that all of you can do, is I'll put my email in the chat here. Email me with your interest, and I'm composing right now. I'm composing a form letter to summon Representative Neal back to this town hall. The town hall is really the goal here. It's the biggest possible action we can take. And I'll have the form letter done. All I need is signatures. I need signatures of people who would like to be at the town hall, who are going to commit to be there. You would need their full name, their signature, of course, and their physical address, as well as preferably their occupation. Listing the occupation really helps make an impact. That's basically the biggest thing you can do. Having a town hall with hard questions and good press, their national press, is the best, most direct action we can take. All of you can be at that town hall, and if you're interested, you should be at the town hall.
Tor, I'm just going to put you on to Rick Brown. I will send you his email. As part of the Sheffield Democrats, Rick spent over a year last year, and I think over 6 months the previous election, trying to get Richie Neal to come forward and hold a town hall in Sheffield. The 2 candidates who were running against him, I can't think of the woman's name, and Alex Morris, were extremely responsive. And Richie ducked it. He's ducked all of the requests. I'll also give you Ben Hillman's email so you can talk to him. Richie knows how not to say yes. I don't mean to discourage you. Maybe you'll be the one who will get him to say yes, but he has a habit. And that was when he was under, trying to win the election. But I'll send you both of those emails, and a chat with them, even if they would get involved, might be helpful. Okay. And thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Renee. Yeah, this is a nice time because it's not an election. It's not just a local election. It's not just a district election. This is a national crisis, and I think people are very refreshed when they can take direct action to make tangible change. So, with national pressure on Neal, of course, when I write this letter, I'm gonna go to the Times. I'm gonna go to the Post, other national outlets, and also local outlets, and this fits very nicely in the sequence of articles and momentum that's been building. Hopefully we get 300 or more. I would imagine we would get quite a few signatures more. And I think Richard Neal's already taken a hit in the last election in popularity. Right now there's extreme pressure, and if he doesn't do it, he doesn't do it. But I think this is the best chance we can have to make him change. So why not take it?
Thank you, Renee, for that additional information, and especially that historical context around how our legislative districts have changed with census data. We did have a question from Jan, who said she lives in Canaan. Can neighboring towns in Connecticut sign the petition?
For this petition to bring him back to a town hall, I imagine that district residents are the most important, but we could also have a separate list for people living outside of district. People can donate to elections in other states and elections in other districts, and this would be very similar. Adding your voice is always important. So you definitely be able to get involved in some way.
We had a question from Michael, who said, isn't the low-hanging fruit, number one, increased enforcement dollars for audits, and number two, making banks issue 1099s for wealth transfers?
That's absolutely correct. That is the easiest fix to these problems, the most direct fix that you and I can get done. Increasing enforcement dollars is very easy, and considering the spending that's going on right now, would be very in place, as well as making issuing 1099 new forms for wealth transfers to banks by the IRS. That is something that wouldn't even take that much money. So you're right. That is the fruit we're aiming for. Thank you.
And then we had another question that I think ties in really well with what Renee said about Neal being kind of slippery to pin down. What is there any leverage to use against him if he resists coming to the town hall? Seems like he may see it as far less conducive to bad press than getting nailed for inaction after such an event.
Yeah, so the leverage, again, through the last few months, national magazines and newspapers and senators and President Biden have begun ramping up pressure just generally to fund the IRS. They have not named actually Richard Neal at all, even though he's the person to start the process. You have the editorial board of the New York Times, of the Washington Post, editorials in the Wall Street Journal that are happening right now. These newspapers are and would be very interested to see how constituents are kind of the local counterpoint to the national politics that are going on right now. That's very common in these newspapers, and these newspapers are actually quite effective in, they destroy lives, they destroy political careers, or they raise them up. Like it or not, they have extreme power, and by dint of our situation, of where we live and the action we can take and the momentum that's building right now, our leverage is holding Neal accountable in these national magazines and local magazines. There's already institutional pressure. Now we need local constituent and media pressure directly on Neal, because the pressure right now is just vague. It's general, fund the IRS, right? If we can focus that pressure on Neal, it is actually quite substantial, quite substantial.
We had a question from Ricky. Does it make any sense to reach out to Elizabeth Warren? Because Neal did come to Great Barrington when she gave a talk last year.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We've already got, again, the Patriotic Millionaires Group is one of the best funded, as you can imagine, groups in the US on just consumer issues. And they have huge clout. The clout enough, again, to make me more confident of getting this national press attention. And I would imagine I think they probably speak to Senator Warren quite often. If we get the numbers for our petition, if we make them big, I would definitely imagine that Elizabeth Warren would want to get involved. That's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions that anyone would like to put in the chat or to raise your hand? We have a question. Mark, would you like to ask?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, loud and clear.
This is Mark from Sheffield. I have a business, and this is just more of a question. I don't know if this question falls under the realm of what you're working on, but in I think Social Security and maybe workman's comp, in your paychecks, you pay a percentage every week, whatever, but there's a ceiling on that. And I think they raised the ceiling, maybe it's 110,000 or something now. So I've always wondered, I don't know the answer. That means that everybody in my business, including me, pays that tax on 100% of the dollars they make. But you could have somebody that could make 100 times more, but his dollars aren't 100% taxed on those kinds of things, where they put a ceiling on it. Is that something that would, I mean, if it's Social Security, everybody says it's going broke, but then you have, multimillionaires that are paying just a tiny, like the first $120,000 or something, they're going to make payments every week up to that. So what about if every dollar everybody made was treated the same? Is that an issue that makes any sense to you?
You're talking about a flat tax rate on every dollar, is that right?
Well,
Mhm.
on at least something like Social Security, every one of my employees and me, we pay on every dollar we make. They take out whatever percentage.
That's right.
But for a millionaire, they pass that $120,000 ceiling, and then all their other dollars aren't taxed for Social Security. And I've always thought if they taxed everybody's dollars, even the rich people,
I see what you're saying.
they'd stop talking about Social Security going broke.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, and it's the same with many other taxes. So there's no reason why we should stop tax increases or even taxes at all on higher income. It's interesting because the more income you have, the more you can afford to part with your money, the less that money means for you. So if you have 50 million, for example, 25 million extra, which is 50% of your wealth, it actually won't change your lifestyle. And I agree. Yeah, there are some big problems in how payroll tax is sidestepped by people who earn even different types of income. Let's say off the stock market or off property transfers.
Right.
So yes, this is something that should definitely be included. It's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael in the chat mentions as well. And I, in a previous library job, Professor Jeff Wilhelms at Rutgers, New Brunswick had talked about this idea that I don't think that many people realize that people making less than 120,000 are being taxed on their full rate for Social Security. But if that cap went away, yes, as Michael and Mark and Professor Wilhelm said, the idea that Social Security is going broke is a little bit of a false idea if we were to really tax people more equitably. We have someone in the chat who was, let's see, this is Tom, who has to leave, but was very grateful for this presentation, really loved your leadership and energy, and quoted Margaret Mead, which I love this quote too. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. We have time for maybe one more question.
I'd like to jump in and just say I'm going to put my email in the chat again. If you want to email me, or you can direct message me through Zoom privately, your email, or I think you know my family, you know my parents. You may want to you may reach out to them as well, or me if you have my contact, and get involved, because you know, it's amazing. It's amazing the power each one of us as an individual has. This is something that doesn't often happen, or ever in most people's lives. So it's pretty amazing the effect that we can have, and we can see the result in several months or a month even. So I think it'd be cool to see some of your names in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal.
Absolutely.
I'd be very impressed.
Well, all right, so I want to take this time to thank Tor for this amazing presentation. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your night to be a part of this conversation. As someone who is a librarian and who works in libraries, I have a lot of passion for civic issues and this kind of civic involvement and activism. And it's amazing to see everyone coming out to engage with a topic like this and really get more involved in how we can bring some real change to our community. So thank you, Tor. Thank you to all of you for participating. So this program has been recorded. When this recording is available, I'll send that out to everyone who had registered. I'll include Tor's email for you to be able to reach out to him. I hope that you stay engaged, that you really get involved in civic conversations like this. I invite you all to stop by the Bushnell-Sage Library. We are open to the public Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 4, Saturdays from 10 to 2. We are still offering curbside pickup, but absolutely come by and say hi and see all of the great things that we have coming up. So everyone, I hope you have a lovely night, and take care. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dina. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
you
everybody.
Very much, Dina. We really appreciate it.
Great job, Dina.